Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Ninth Grade Experience podcast. I'm your host, Chris Dutchko. Before we get into the episode this week, where we take a look back at 1 year since the beginning of COVID-19, we're going to do some announcements and talk about some current things going on here with the podcast. So the first thing is our Class of 2024 fundraiser. That goes through March 26th. It's the opportunity to raise some money for the junior prom and senior ball. There's lots of great items that you can purchase. To access that, you want to go to ehsfc21.superfanfundraising.com. So if you go on there, you click the link and it'll take you and you can buy stuff and it benefits the class of 2024. So that's a good way to raise some money there. So that's going to be through the end of the month. Second one, kind of going along with our theme here, is if you haven't checked out the newest issue of the Stinger, the school newspaper, if you've never seen it, if you're in the building, they have it in newspaper boxes around, or you can get it online at stingerehs.com, or you can follow it on Twitter at stingerehs, or Instagram stingerehs, or on Snapchat at stinger.ehs. Lots of great articles, lots of great student perspective here on different COVID events and other things that have happened throughout the last year. Some really great reporting there. So I would check that out as well. Third, if you've been following along, you can see that I'm still wearing the green EHS Career Readiness t-shirt, and March is EHS Career Readiness Month here at Emmaus High School. So if you use the hashtag EHS Career Month and post a picture of doing something career related, you too have the chance to win one of these green shirts or a sweatshirt. Not a whole lot of students have entered. So if you're listening and you think that you want to do it, you might as well go for it and try to get that shirt. This shirt here is super comfortable, and you can, if you're watching the video, or if you're not, you can walk around the school. If you've been in the school and you see the green shirts, they are super comfortable. So again, hashtag EHS Career Month. You can post it on Instagram, post it on Twitter. We're on the lookout there for those great pictures. And if you haven't gone onto your Class of 2024 page to take a look at some of that stuff, please go on and do that. So then you can learn all about the career speakers, and you can start to plan and see what you might be interested in. Because even as a freshman, it's never too early to start thinking about those things, especially with class selection and other stuff. And lastly, we want to encourage you all to follow along with the podcast here. If you go to ninthgradeexperience.com, it's our new website that has all the episodes there, audio, video, a chance to subscribe, whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts, whether you're listening on Spotify or any other app to listen to podcasts, or if you want to subscribe on YouTube, the links are there as well too. We might even do some blogging and some other stuff there as well. So it's the one-stop shop for all things Ninth Grade Experience podcast. So hopefully you check that out. It's ninthgradeexperience.com. Ninth and with the number 9, gradeexperience.com. So hopefully you have a chance to check that out here with this episode. So thanks for listening here. And we're going to now jump into the episode where students will give some of their impressions about what they've learned about themselves. As we start today's episode, think back to March 12th, 2020. It was a Thursday, if you don't remember. The next day we had off from school, March 13th. If you remember back, that was the last full day of school that we had for the 2020 school year. But at the time when we had that day, I don't know if any of us were really thinking or understanding what the world was going to turn into for the next year. So as we now come up to we just passed the 1 year anniversary of our school being shut down, and kind of still inching our way back to whatever normal is going to look like. It's an interesting time to take a look back and see what happened in the past year. If you followed the podcast during the shutdown last year, I tried each week to come up with a new episode focusing on different events, different things, different things people were talking about in relation to what was going on. And they were some of our most listened to episodes, especially the first one when we started recording. And we had students that wanted to jump on and talk and kind of just see how things were going. And it's really interesting. We're now a year later. We're doing it through message boards now. So kids are kind of more willing to participate with the written word than coming on the podcast, which has led to a couple episodes where I'm reading their responses. And that's what we're going to have today, as we have a lot of students that are willing to type out their answers and let me kind of read them, as opposed to students that are coming onto the podcast, which is an interesting change in 1 year. But, we're always looking for new voices. So if you ever have something you want to talk about or some cool experience, we're looking for people to come on the ninth grade experience all the time. So it's just really interesting. We're going to take a look back a little bit now through some of the student responses here. But I wanted to start off by just reading a little excerpt from an article here by former podcast guest Jessica Leahy. She was on in January, and we'll have a little mini episode coming up probably in a week or so as we focus on, she's releasing a book. And I wanted to put out a different part of the conversation that I had with her around launching a book. And I think it's really neat for students to listen to, for an author to talk about what that process is like. And it's on a really interesting topic about addiction in teenagers and students in general. So it's really kind of an interesting topic. But she wrote in an article that appeared in the Boston Globe magazine in February of 2021, which is kind of framing our discussion today. She said the history books will come to likely enumerate the many challenges we faced and the mistakes we made as a society as we fought COVID-19. I hope those books will also report that we learned from our mistakes and emerged stronger and more empathetic. My greatest hope, however, is that we'll remember some of the gifts we discovered in our isolation, of time, of communication, and of the bonding that results from pulling together as a family in the face of hardship. And it's really interesting that she wrote those words. This was at the end of a rather long article. And really, it kind of summed up everything we wanted to look at today. We're not going to focus on the things that were negative, and we could do that for a lot of the time here. But we asked students on a message board to respond to the question, what have you learned about yourself in the past year? So we've gotten some good responses here that I have typed out, printed out, ready to read here. So again, I'm going to read through. I'll add in some commentary as we go through as well too. So we really appreciate all the student responses, and I'm going to read them with their names, except for one student who kind of mentioned something personal. So we're going to leave that name out. But our first response here right away was from Irene Morris Rangel. And she said, that I realize that I am way more artistic than I think, and I can come up with ideas way easier when I sit down and think for a second. I also realized who my true friends are. Once quarantine hit and I lost contact with friends, I kept the ones who checked up on me closest to my heart. I'll also cherish the small things now because tomorrow isn't promised to anybody. And I think that's something that a lot of people are thinking, and pretty wise words there from a ninth grade student as well. We have a longer response here from Carter Fellinger. So we'll read through this one here. It says, one of the things I learned about myself in the past year is that I'm more interested in astronomy than I thought. I used to be interested in astronomy back in fourth grade, but lost interest in it after that. I got interested in astronomy again after watching videos about the history of Tomorrowland at the Disney parks. That led me to researching more about outer space and getting interested in astronomy again. One thing I learned was that Alpha Centauri, the closest solar system to us, and how it'll take a while to get there because current day technology isn't advanced enough to travel there. Another thing I learned is that I'm much more of a doodler than I thought too, since I created drawings between March 2020 and August 2020 with help from pictures online, like how to draw different hand positions. Now I mainly do pixelated drawings with graph paper, colored pencils, and images from the internet. But he's more of a writer than an artist. So really interesting feedback there. Lots of great stuff. I think one of the things that a lot of students and staff and just people learned new hobbies, reintroduce themselves to different things that maybe they had lost their way with a little bit. So that was great from Carter to kind of give us that big rundown astronomy. So, Mr. McConville, if he's listening, I'm sure that makes him pretty happy, and that's a class we offer here at the high school. So again, if you're thinking about classes for next year, astronomy, there's multiple levels of that as well too. Mrs. Neller also teaches astronomy. So there you go. Big shout out for the astronomy classes. Richard Stockton wrote that I realized that I am more of a leader than I thought I was. I found myself leaning towards helping people that have trouble with certain things that I'm strong in, giving ideas to people that will further grow their business. So again, if he's out there growing business, we'd love to hear what some of his ideas are as we're trying to grow the ninth grade experience here. Angelina Anderson wrote in, I noticed that I'm extremely connected to the internet. With that lack of social interaction, I've enjoyed watching people interact normally through television and YouTube videos. I also noticed I have an awful habit of not finishing shows I've already watched. I have to start develop a habit of I started to develop a habit of talking out loud to myself which shows very much with them on Zoom. So it's interesting there about following through on television and watching things. I think that's why reality TV is so intoxicating to people, because they're watching people live their lives in lots of different ways. So I'm sure that picked up a lot as well too. And now you're starting to see some reality TV shows that are like in the middle of the pandemic. So it's interesting to see how those people were living with that as well. So thanks for sharing there. Ryan Bennett chimed in. I realized how much I appreciated being able to watch sports. I'm so glad that all the sports are starting to get started again, because that's a big part of our society and the feeling of getting back to normal. And a couple of people did check in with that. And yeah, that's a big one. We're going into March. We're in the middle of March here. So March Madness, the basketball tournament's coming, baseball starting. We have basketball and hockey in full swing. College football in some places is going on if you're like a Lehigh fan. So we're starting to get back to normal in lots of different ways, but I think a lot of people, especially here at the high school level, missed, going to Friday night football games or, going to basketball games, going to do all those different things. So again, we're starting to kind of get some more people allowed in some different places. I know the PPL Center is letting some people in as well too. So that's getting us a little bit back to normal. So I think Ryan echoes what a lot of students think with that about losing sports and losing that sense of normalcy. Naomi Sharpless said that I've learned that I get lonely more when being on Zoom all day, even when I'm with my family after classes end. I think I've learned how to better cope with the feeling, and going into school helps with that as well. I've also learned that writing down my thoughts and strong feelings make me happier, especially in this time when I can't see my friends. So again, finding those creative outlets, whether it's writing, we heard drawing. So I think people are going towards a lot more of these creative outlets in order to get their expressions and their thoughts out. Braden Shenewolf wrote down, I realized that I've unlocked some undiscovered talents. Now, there was no mention of what those were, so hopefully they're under lock and key that he knows about. But again, just kind of keeping that close to the vest. But again, I think a lot of people are unlocking some hidden talents as they go through. Michael Cheese or Chies, Chies, sorry about the mispronunciation there, said learned a lot about himself this past year and just left it just as basic as that. So, it's something as simple as just learning a whole lot about yourself. Aiden Lankowski wrote, I realized how much I was capable of. My persistence has significantly improved since past grades, especially in writing assignments. I have to realize that I can do it, though. I doubt myself all throughout the assignment until it's done. When I finish that assignment that required a lot of persistence, it's like cracking the code on the last lock of an escape room. A bright light of success peeks through the crack in the doorway and hypnotizes you to get out of the healthy pain you're currently in. Also, I got better at words I use in writing assignments, and that is clearly the case here. So Aiden using some nice language there. So your ninth grade English teacher, hopefully that person is listening and they are impressed by the words that you've used as you're writing there as well. But again, putting some good visuals in there as well too. And we have one more, and we're going to omit the name for this one. They didn't say to or not to, but again, they're mentioning some personal stuff here. So we're going to leave the last name out. But this person wrote in that they've learned that this type of learning environment that they're stuck in currently isn't any better for mental health than normal school is. I'm still working on managing my schoolwork and how to handle my well-being at the same time, though it's been quite hard due to my whole family having COVID at the moment. But a part of life is experiencing challenges. And that's an interesting one to kind of end on here, is that while we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, we are not there yet. So remember to keep, doing the things that we need to do to stay safe. We have to keep doing the distancing as best we can and all those things as well. And hopefully, if you had to deal with some of those hardships or anything throughout this past year, that, everyone's kind of working their way through that as well. So some great insights from some of our students about what they've learned about themselves during this past year. So if you want to relive some of the moments from last year when we kind of went into the lockdown, you can go listen to all the different episodes we call them coronavirus updates. You can go in and listen to all those all throughout. Or if you just want to kind of keep moving forward, we'll catch you on the next episode of the ninth grade experience. Remember what you heard at the top of the show there. You can subscribe. You can find all the past episodes at ninthgradeexperience.com. Tell a friend, post about it, write a review, anything to get the word out about the awesome things that our ninth graders are doing here at Emmaus High School and beyond. So thanks a lot for listening, and we look forward to next week's episode. Thanks a lot, everybody.